are back. This is part B, so if you clicked on this without listening to part A, please click on part A and then come back to this. Okay, thank you. Alright, so we finished off, we were talking about the Passion of the Christ. That was, one of the big things about that film was it was made by Mel Gibson. He has a record for being anti-Semitic. There was a lot of accusations about the film topic itself being anti-Semitic because the Jewish mob had demanded for the execution of Jesus. And so somehow, by portraying the truth of the people said, let his blood be upon us and our children, portraying that somehow equals into anti-Semitism. Mel Gibson aside. And let's be honest, Mel Gibson's Catholic. He's very Catholic. A lot of people who claim to be Christian are Catholic. And there's push and moves for people to return to certain denominations. Catholicism, Mormonism in particular, are very, I don't want to say evangelical because they're separate from the evangelical movement, but in the sense that trying to get people to return back to the faith that they grew up with, or spreading their faith and obtaining new members and new families and growing in that way. I've actually been really surprised. Since we're talking about movies, and I did just mention Mormons, there are some really good family movies that I really like, and I was surprised, and it's like, those are the kind of movies that I wanted to make since I was a kid, because they dealt with kids and adventures, and they weren't super hokey, they weren't Disney-fied. They did have their problems, like being a little low-budget films, but story-wise and character-wise, I really liked them. And can find out they were done by Mormons, and there's a lot of films these days that are Mormons. Let's see, Twilight series was written by a Mormon. Apparently the big message of that is abstinence until marriage. That would be, one of these days I will have to do something dealing with the Twilight series. A critique and analysis of that, because that's a strange phenomenon in of itself. Because it's like people they either hate it or they love it, and the thing is, it's very steep in occultism. And I'll just do a quick throwback. The first book review that I wrote for Baptist for Liberty, this first book review I've ever wrote, and it was The Masks of God. And I did that because it was 2012. It was during the general election. Romney was the Republican contender. He is Mormon. And so I reviewed a book that was revealing the very cult background of Mormonism. And there's been documentaries and other books on the subject. And so when it comes to Twilight, I find it very interesting. Does Twilight relate to sacrifice? Let me think. Not really. Maybe in the second film, the girl keeps Bella trying to kill herself just to bring back her love, because he left. I suppose in a way it's a personal sacrifice. You can talk about the big, grand, epic scale kinds of sacrifice, but then there's also the very personal types of sacrifice. In a way, I guess the films kind of portray the more personal level, and maybe it tries the bigger scaled ones too, but in the second one, and I haven't watched all the films, only little clips here and there, and outlines and reviews and stuff like that for it, because I'm interested in films and what attracts people to certain films. And anyway, but he gives up their romantic relationship, the main hero, Edward, to protect Bella and the main female lead. And that's sacrificial. I mean, they're both very much in love with one another, but she doesn't accept that. You know, she'd rather put her life on the line to be with him. And you might see that as being sacrificial or extremely selfish and stupid. As far as I know from how it's presented in the film, it's the stupid part. But whatever. Anyway, let's get back to some more interesting films. The films I have seen. Well, okay, let me just say one more thing on this Twilight thing. Because in my notes, one of the first things I wanted to write was that, you know, movies do have a profound effect on our culture. And I touched on that a little bit in the first. And one of the big criticisms thrown at Twilight is because so many young girls, whether they're preteens, teenagers, and actually the sad thing is most of the people I knew who was really invested in these movies and eager and excited about these movies, they weren't the tweens that a lot of critics say the movies were targeted for. No, actually most of them were women in their 20s and 30s and 40s. These were women with life experiences, who were married, who had children. These weren't just your dumb, you know, that's what a lot of critics call kids. They're just stupid, they don't know anything. I'm not saying I agree with that opinion at all. I think kids are not given enough credit. So I think it's interesting. In my personal experience, the people who were actually the most enthusiastic was much older than what some critics say. But nevertheless, because they believe that these movies were targeted for younger audiences, that it's very damaging because Bella is so reckless and has no motives outside of a romantic relationship. And so there's concerns there that the movies are very damaging towards women, and especially from a feminist point of view, critiquing the movies. And that seems to be like the largest, most vocal against the movies were feminists, people who are very strongly of the feminist philosophy. So, yeah, movies have an effect, and even when a particular movie may not have the effect, how do I word this? Group A is scared that product, you know, the movie, is going to have effect 1. In reality, it's underlying, it's something else, maybe plot 2, or a hidden theme that's actually, you know, the real danger. That's the real problem there. So on the subject of Twilight, for an example, I see it, and I mentioned Mormonism and stuff already, and a lot of critics are mad because of the dumbing down of the scariness of vampires and werewolves, and that it ruins the history of these creatures. Well, here's the thing. By softening these creatures, these are occult creatures. These are occult ideas. The real danger is not the damage that these movies are going to do to feminism. The real danger isn't that it destroys these scary monsters that have been heroes in legends and films for generations. The real danger is that they're softening out to the point of even people who don't like scary things, who aren't interested in cultish stuff normally, are drawn to it because it is a romance, because the softening of the image of the vampires can attract somebody to these occult ideas. From my standpoint and view of the films and the ideas presented in the books, that is the bigger danger. yeah, and just off the top of my head, there was something else I just thought about. We're talking about being careful about the things that we put in our minds and the effects that they're going to have on us, and the facts that ultimately these things are going to have effect on us personally. They're going to have effect on our culture at large. When something is largely, massively consumed, like these big blockbuster films, and don't fool yourselves, even if you hate Twilight, guess what? It was a big blockbuster film. People consume it. People are still interested in these films, and they're still consuming it. And there are movies, there are articles, dealing with that we're sacrificing the minds of the next generation and our children when we don't guard the movies that we watch. So I know that I've read so many different ones along those lines, whether it was just a short article or not. I'll try to find something on that to link in the show notes. No guarantees. We'll see if I can find something along those lines. And if I probably won't find something right away tonight, but maybe later I'll add it to the show notes when I find something. But anyway, I'm running out of time. I've been rambling. I didn't mean to be talking about Twilight and stuff like that for so long. There's so many other movies. Okay, so first thing, I believe it was a Buster Keaton movie about, well, no, I'm going to skip that one, because I was going to rewatch some of these movies before I commented on it, and that one I'm really not really sure about, so I can't really comment on that. But when I was a kid, there was a pilot episode for an animated series. It was called Mighty Ducks. It was not related to the awesome sports movie Mighty Ducks for kids. Rather, it was still hockey related. It was still hockey, but it was actually supposed to be in Anaheim, like professional team. But it was a cartoon, and it was actual ducks, and it was really cool, and I was actually really into it. But the pilot episode was on, and actually it was playing for the second or third time, and my mom saw it, and it was like near the end of the first half of this pilot, because a lot of times pilot episodes, 2 episodes actually, so it's at the end of part 1, and one of the main characters, and he was like your stereotypical leader, good, smart, sure of himself, and the heroes were in this trans-dimensional wormhole thing, and their ship that they were on were going to get crushed because of this monster that was hanging on to it. So this guy that you thought was supposed to be like leader and your main character jumps out of the ship and sacrifices himself to the monster in order to save the rest of the good guys so that they can get through, and they end up landing on the other side of this wormhole on planet Earth and become the Mighty Ducks hockey team while they fight their arch enemies, these lizard creatures. Drake Ducanis, I think, was the bad guy's name. But anyway, my mom saw the last 2 minutes of this episode, and she's like, that is so unbiblical, because the only one that can die to save you is Jesus Christ. And I'm like, well, yeah, he's not dying to save their souls. He's dying to save their lives. Temporarily at least. They're heroes. They're going to be putting their lives in danger for the rest of the series and the episodes fighting the bad guys. But that, I don't know, my mom's comment on that just stuck with me. And keep in mind, this was not quite 20 years ago. Let me put it that way. No, let me see. I was 12, so about 18 years ago. Yeah. And anyway, I thought that was interesting. So when I'm thinking about heroes and things, I realized, wait a minute, but that's the theme. That is the point of most films, especially action films. Really, you come to mind Captain America. There's a big blockbuster film. really great film in so many levels, really enjoyable. I was worried about some of the politics in it, but I found it was kind of interesting. Anyway, I could critique certain elements of that, but I'd have to rewatch it before I could really dive in it. But in particular, the point was Captain America is Captain America because he wants to do the right thing for the right reasons, and he's willing to sacrifice himself, and he's Steve Rogers, before he gets a super serum, he's a skinny, scrawny dude, and people think he's nothing. He just gets pushed around, and so to prove a point, Tommy Lee Jones' characters throws a grenade, all these macho meathead, spitting images of what you think a hero should be, American soldiers and everything, they run, they scatter, and Steve Rogers throws himself on the bomb and grabs it, or the grenade, but the point is he was using his body as his shield to protect his fellow soldiers and everybody else on the base that might be nearby. And this little German scientist is like, that's my point. It isn't the muscles, it isn't physical prowess, it is the willingness to do the right thing, even at risk to yourself. And when we think about action movies, I grew up on so many war movies, I don't know even where to begin on that list. Not thinking about American war movies in particular, or John Wayne movies. The idea of the soldier who dies or risks getting a limb blown off, and real life reports. These stories, these ideas, these iconic moments are actually built on real people who were willing to risk themselves, either their life or limb, for somebody else. And even the scriptures points out, Jesus during his ministry, how was it? I meant to look up this verse beforehand and I didn't. I think I had it in my notes, or I meant to put it in my notes and I didn't. But he's talking about how we treat our enemies and doing something nice for somebody else because you expect them to return the favor. And he's like, few people would risk themselves even for a good man, even for a good person, okay? But no one's gonna give themselves for, humanly speaking, not gonna give ourselves for an evil person. How many movies are based on the assassination of Hitler, or even TV shows of anything that time travels? Eventually, there's gonna be the Let's Kill Hitler episode. And the point is he's evil. It's like, if you have the opportunity to take away what iconically in our minds is the pinnacle of human depravity and evilness, you would do it. How many people, though, would go back in time to save him, to make sure that evil does not befall him? Seriously, it's like, who's gonna want to save Hitler? Even to restore the timeline to its proper course and blah, 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 blah. I know. Science fiction, fun. But the point of the scripture is there is like, and Jesus was, ultimately, he was talking about himself. Like, sinners are his enemies. But he's there, when you talk about a good man versus an evil man. Well, Scripture says all have fallen, all have sinned, all are unworthy. When you really get down to it, there ain't any good man. The Bible says that. Men, women, children, boys, girls, whatever. They're all fallen, they're all condemned, and yet Jesus Christ, while we were yet his enemies, died. Paid the ultimate sacrifice. He was that sacrifice. And I think, I don't know what it is about human nature that we are drawn to stories of sacrifice. We are drawn to stories of heroes. Whether it's because we want to be heroes, we want to believe that we can be that powerful person, that we can do something like that, or we just want the glory, the fame, the accolades, or maybe because we see our need, that we need somebody to save us. The idea of sacrifice, the ideas of heroes, the ideas of the downtrodden, the victim, these are things that we see in real life. These are things that we see in our stories. When you read about tragic events like the bombing of that marathon, and I'm sorry I don't remember the exact name and location and date and everything for that, I should, but quickly, not only do we want to look at the perpetrators, but look at who are the people that rose above the situation and were the heroes. And you see articles, the hero of this, there was the shooting at the college in Oregon, and there was a man there who, he had a gun, but the authorities and wouldn't let him use his gun, so he left his gun, but he still went into that situation and risked life and limb to protect people. When we see movies or about police officers or military men, if it features them in a positive light, it's all about the nobility of those positions, because they risk their lives, the sacrifices that they make. And of course, when you look at those things, if you're going to look at them objectively, you have to see what's the message behind that. Is it just glorifying that office? Is it just glorifying these noble ideas? Or is there a particular political message of what that person, that character really represents? There's movies like The Three Musketeers. The Three Musketeers motto, it comes from the book. My sister Elizabeth's actually a bookworm, and she read, I think, almost all the books by Alexander Dumas revolving these characters. I think there's like 4 or 5 books on those, and she read most of them, if not all of them. And she's like, the motto, one for all and all for one, really only appears like once or twice. It's not something that they say a lot, but in every film adaptation, of course, it's said over and over and over again. And in the 1992 film by Disney, which was awesome, it was one of the first films I saw in theaters, and I love that movie so much for nostalgia reasons. And plus, it gets you so pumped up. The introduction of the characters, and they pull out their swords, and they say their motto, all for one for all. And what does that mean? It means when you're part of a group, whether it's a band of men, it's a gang, or whatever it is, you're part of that collective, then you have that protection that all of us will risk for you, and you're going to risk everything for us. Star Trek, The Wrath of Khan, Leonard Nimoy's character Spock has that line, I'm sorry, I can't remember off the top of my head. I had it. But he sacrificed himself for the greater good. It's basically, one life is nothing, I should like totally be able to quote this line, and I'm sorry I can't do it. I'm drawing a blank, but I know the meaning of it. And we were talking about good intentions before, and the idea of the greater good. Well, what is the greater good? Who gets to decide who's the greater good? Who gets to decide whose one life is worth saving? And again, we look at these ideas and these concepts in these movies about, the bigger picture. The many is more important than the few. That's what Hollywood teaches us. But the scriptures teaches us that the good shepherd went out for that one. He had 100 sheep, and he went and saved that one. That individual was precious to him. And as much as, some of these action films and stuff are really good, there's certain movies that portray this idea of the greater number, the many, is more important than the few, or will sacrifice this group in order to save that group, or whatever, it always sits like a rock in my stomach, you know? It just leaves a bad taste in my mouth when I see films like that. Even if I enjoy the rest of the film, when it has that pathos, when it has that philosophy, and it's an ugly philosophy, it really is. And especially in light of the scriptures, when you see Christ, that perfect sacrifice, and we understand from a theological point of view, he has his elect, but he doesn't select a few because they're more important. In fact, he says that, you know, that there's nothing about us that would attract him to us, that he has individually, personally picked an elect, and we are precious to him, and he would go out for that one, that individual, because he loves that one, that's his chosen. It's a very different picture, I think, than you know, the few being expendable. Oh no, my goodness, there was so many different movies. There's Star Wars, Obi-Wan Kenobi's death, later Anakin slash Darth Vader. There's so many different action movies that it is hard to even start a solid list on that. I had my notes: Die Hard 4 versus Die Hard 5. I know Die Hard 4 has, you know, near the end, that whole car taking down a plane and collateral damage was really reckless, but what I really enjoyed was near the beginning of the movie. John McClane's character was about nobody was unimportant. Even the creep Ellis in the first movie. You know, part of you watching the movie might go like, that guy really had it coming to him when Gruber kills him. But John McClane, and this is what sets him apart as a really good character, even he was like thinking to himself, please, Ellis, shut up, don't do this, because you're gonna die, you know. And Ellis was a jerk, and he's just a fictional character, and yet John McClane, a fictional character, still wanting to protect him and save his life. And I'm running out of time, and there was just so many different movies, and I spent so much time on other things. And okay, I was originally picked out the whole chapter that I was going to read. I don't know how much I'm going to actually be able to get through this. So, Isaiah chapter 53 was what I was going to read, but I will just skip down to verse 4. Surely he hath borne our griefs and carried our sorrows, yet we did esteem him stricken, smitten of God, and afflicted. But he was wounded for our transgressions, he was bruised for our iniquities, and chastisements of our peace was upon him, and with his stripes we are healed. And that was verses 4, 5, verse 6. All we like sheep have gone astray, we have turned every one to his own way, and the Lord hath laid on him the iniquity of us all. Thank you, and hope to see you again.